So today's video is going to be all about heat exchangers, the intercooler, condenser, transmission cooler. We'll be talking about how we're going to set that system up for the car. Y'all enjoy. Okay, so we got the intercooler bolted back in. You can see the charge pipe over here is lined up great. That one just sags a little, but it's easy to fix. No big deal. We got clearance between the AC condenser and the intercooler. Not a ton, but maybe less than an inch, but there's some room. Let's see if I can scoot the camera this way, maybe. Yeah, kinda. Light doesn't get in there very well, but there's a little bit of room. It's okay, but that's not enough space for the transcooler. So I'm not sure yet what we're gonna do. These brackets that locate the intercooler are just aluminum. You can see one there, there's another one over there. Those are simple to make. I could make new brackets. If I wanted to move the intercooler forward, I do have some space to do. Alright, good news. We got the intercooler put in. It's lined up pretty good. And we have space between the condenser and the intercooler. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little more. It's kind of hard to show and get depth perception. But it's okay. It's an acceptable amount of clearance. We do have a big opening up here, so above this intercooler we still have that several inches of space for air to go around the intercooler and still get to the radiator and now through the condenser up there. And then down here you can see the intercooler hangs well below all of this like it did before, so that's probably good. We currently don't have space for the transcooler. We still got to figure out how we're going to do that. So one option is to move the intercooler forward towards the bumper. I'm not sure what that would entail. I'll try to get the camera in here. So you can see, if we line up on that face, it can go forward some. Eventually, it might hit the hood latch, maybe. I'm not sure. The depth, it might go under it. But it's close, but there is room to move that. And redoing the top brackets would actually be easy. That's just some more aluminum. That wouldn't be a big deal to make those. The problem is the bottom. Those charge pipes are all steel, not silicone. The only thing that's silicone is the couplers, and you can tell like where this goes together. That's a very short piece of silicone. It's the same thing over here. If I lift this pipe up, you know. So if we go that route, we got to start messing with charge pipes. There's really, maybe this one I might be able to get a tiny bit of movement. Basically, we're going to have to start messing with charge pipes if we want to move the intercooler forward an appreciable amount. So what I think I'm going to do, what I would prefer to do is not put the transcooler here. I'd rather put it like over here or over there. But as you can guess, we got charge pipes in both locations. And there's a tire fairly close. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess I need to look into this and see what it would take if there's any way to put the cooler here. And if we did, we would probably need a fan as well, so it could get some air. Or, well, maybe not immediately, but we would like to have a fan on it if we're going to put it over here, because at least up there it used the fans for the engine to help pull air through it. And a drag race. So if you make a pass and then park the car, you don't have airflow. So, still got to look into that. But this part, if we end up remote mounting the transcooler, so if it goes in like the back of the car, or if it goes over here, or wherever, I have no clue. But if we do, and we keep this stuff like this, this actually looks fairly clean. And I would prefer to do it that way for a couple reasons. And one of the reasons is if you look at this intercooler, this is the 20 by 12, dimensions 3 inches thick. And right now, we have a gap between the condenser. That's probably, just leave it the way it is. See if I can get something that gives you a little bit of depth perception. Yeah, you can see there's a gap. So that's okay, but you can tell we could go forward. There's actually a decent amount of clearance here. Let me grab a tape measure. I'll show you. Well, now I'll show you. I hit a button. So anyway, we got roughly 2 inches. Maybe a little more. Yeah. We did it off of that. Yeah, that's 2.5 inches basically. So we have some room for a thicker intercooler, and this is a 3 inch, and I would definitely like to go to a 4 or a 4.5 or something like that. I really would like to do that. And it could also be wider. As you can see, we've got room for this end tank over here. Eventually it's going to run into this little angled piece, but I kind of want to change that. And then height-wise, we have a lot of space. We got easily 4, 5, 6 inches. But we can make it taller. So that's the good news. If we don't put the transcooler here, and we, maybe we have to do some work to remote mount the transcooler somewhere else, but the good news is when we decide to upgrade this intercooler, and I know that upgrade's coming, we won't have to deal with that problem. We'll already have made space for it, and that would be great. That would give us, like you can see, we've got some design freedom then to really get a nice size intercooler in the car. Alright guys, so we've been going through this trying to figure out how we're gonna make this work. So you can see we still got our heat exchanger for the transmission laying there. So what we did was I adjusted the spring to where this would be as low as possible. I used a floor jack to pick this up as much as I could, and that's where it stopped. Now I understand, I think it should actually go a little higher. But anyway, that's where it started lifting the car off the lift. So we got that mostly compressed all the way, and we turned the wheel as much as we could, and we started looking at the space available here. And from the camera, this looks like a lot of room, but here's the problem. When you actually put the bumper on here, if you go look at the bumper, it makes a big hook right there and curves. So what ends up happening is there's not as much space there as you think. You see the headlight area, it's already turned drastically by the time you get to that point. And the headlight starts way over here. So basically it's right where the heat exchanger goes, it's already curving into itself. So essentially there's like a wall like right here. So I put the bumper on, and I tried every way I could think of to try to put that heat exchanger where this goes. And it just won't work. So for example, one of the first things you run into is this frame. This frame. So if I push that, let's see. I don't have a tape measure. But anyway, from here to here is like, here to here, that's probably 6 inches tops. So when you put that exchanger in here, it ends up hanging down here. Way down here, way below the car. Much lower than it should. So I can't do that. It would poke it out about 4 inches below the bottom of the bumper or something. It was absurd. So if I got a much smaller heat exchanger, then I could probably get something to fit over here. But that thing, as big as it is never going to fit over here. Also, I have to still get a boost pipe out of here, and that's going to eat up some of the space. But before I considered how to solve that problem, I wanted to see if there's any way at all for that heat exchanger to fit. If there's no way, then it doesn't matter, and I don't have to worry about this problem. So we looked at it. There's no way it's going to fit there. Now, we could put it here, right in front of the intercooler. But that would be, we're not doing that. We could do it, but it's a bad idea. Now we're dumping heat right into the charge air that we're trying to cool. So, plus when you put the bumper on, you'd see that instead of my pretty intercooler. So, here's what we're thinking. I think this is going to go in the back of the car, where we used to have the condenser or whatever. I don't know exactly the details, but somewhere back there under the car where it'll have to have a fan on it. But I think that's what we're going to do. And let me explain why. There's a lot of reasons to do this. So, by not putting it in the front of the car, there's a lot of benefits. So one example is I get to move weight to the rear of the car. Now the transmission is not in the front of the car, the transmission's in the middle of the car. So I have to run these hoses, these are like 6 or 8 feet to get to the front of the car. Well, I can just as well run them backwards. So I'm not paying as much of a penalty as I did for, say, air conditioning, where that is in the front of the car and I ran it all the way to the back. So we get to move weight to the back of the car, that's good for grip. Another thing, that's one less heat exchanger in the front of the vehicle, so that means the other ones that do stay, so the intercooler, the AC condenser, and the radiator, will get cooler air and more air. Both of those are benefits. Another one, we get to save space where we route all this stuff. Without having that heat exchanger, I have more room more design freedom for other things. A big benefit of this, right now, if this had to go in the front of the car, then it would have to go in the center stack up. Which means in the future, when I want to upgrade, like right now, I would either have to move the intercooler forward and then put this behind the intercooler, or put this in front of the intercooler. Now if I put it in front of the intercooler, it's actually going to hit the bumper, but I could probably cut that and make it work. But this is going to limit my space for a larger intercooler in the future, and that's a big negative, because as you can probably guess, we're going to put a bigger turbo on this car at some point, and we're also going to need a bigger intercooler. So I would like to preserve this space right now. As well, we can use existing intercooler brackets and existing boost pipes, which means I don't have to make any of that stuff, which is awesome. What else is there? There could be a couple other things, but anyway, those are the main benefits. So that's a serious amount of benefits to not putting it in the front of the car and instead putting it in the back. What are the benefits of putting it in the back? Well, like we said, we move weight back there. Another benefit is there's more space in the back of the car than there is in the front. I just have a wide open trunk right now. Now, admittedly, I'm planning to put some things back there as well for race car purposes, so it's not free space, completely free. We are going to use it eventually, but there's just more room back there. Now let's get to the downsides. The biggest downside is we're not going to have clean air going to this. This thing is going to be drawing in, the only air it's going to get is by a fan moving air to it, or through it. The second downside is going to be that air is likely not going to be ambient. When I was running the AC in the back of the car, I could get as high as 130 or 140 degree air going into the condenser, simply because on a 100 degree day, you've got all the heat exchangers in the front of the car dumping heat under the car, and then that rejected hot air mixed with ambient air is what's getting sucked into a heat exchanger in the back of the car. So we won't be able to pull our transmission temperature down to ambient, for example. However, that's not really a problem because you don't want to run a transmission that cold. So essentially, that aspect's not a problem, but what will be what's limiting, since we have less of a delta T, the performance will be more difficult. Now, to our advantage, this heat exchanger is gigantic. It's a really big one. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to put a respectable fan and shroud on this to get airflow. But we do have room for it, so that's kind of an advantage, but also a downside. That means we got to buy a fan, we got to build a shroud, we have to run wiring, something has to turn this on and off. So those are kind of downsides. A little extra weight, for the fan, the wiring, and all that stuff. But when you consider everything, I really think this is going to be the best option, the best way to go. This is going to make several things in the front of the car easier, and I think the trade-off's worth it. Oh, one last thing I didn't mention that is another benefit. So I have to put the dryer, which is up on the windshield right now. I don't think I've really showed you guys this. This is the dryer / accumulator. Just filters the Freon to remove moisture and contamination. That has to go somewhere, and it needs to go, I'll show you. This is the area where it would best be suited. So that little hose on the condenser, that's where your liquid line comes out. And right over here, let's see if I can get it. That little one with a fitting on it is the liquid line that goes up to the car, to the evaporator and expansion valve. So there's a hose coming off of it right now. Those two things are only about, 8 or 10 inches away from each other. So this general area right here, I could just build a bracket and put the dryer somewhere in that location, and that'll keep both hoses between those be very short. So, and there's space there. There's not enough space for this big thing with a fan, but it looks like there's enough space for a dryer. So that's another benefit, is it'll allow us to put the dryer where we'd want to put it. Keep that weight down low and in a spot we're not using currently anyway, so kind of a good thing. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. We don't know the details of how we're going to put this in the car yet. We will have to figure that out, and I don't know. We're going to have to look at where to put it, brackets, fans, shrouds, powering it, ducting air in and out. So that's a little project on its own, and plus we got to run hoses there and back. And I'm likely going to change how I did these. I can't remember what's on the transmission, but here I just ran like hydraulic hose essentially to a barb fitting with a hose clamp. And I want to change all this to AN stuff. It'll look better and I'd feel better about it. So may have to buy some fittings to go on the trans to convert to AN. And then after that, we'll just install the exchanger and get some custom hoses made. So yeah, we've now made that decision, and this is going to make the rest of the install up here much more straightforward. So that's kind of the conclusion. I think the trade-off will be worth it. Y'all let me know what y'all think. And we're going to move forward. So I can show you, right now we just have these clamps. The condenser is essentially, that clamp is holding it, and then the clamp's just running into the sheet metal, so that's what's holding it in place. Over here, same idea. But I think that's next, is we got to start building brackets for this. I'm probably about to knock off for the night, but plan is, you can see there's metal right here, so we could just do an angled bracket that welds to the chassis, to that box tube, and it just makes a 90-degree and drill a hole or two and bolt it right to the condenser. And we can do the same thing over here, same, just mirror image basically. So this actually should be pretty easy. In theory, I can build a bracket that fits, bolt it to the condenser, and then while it's in place, just reach in there with a welder and weld the bracket to the chassis and you're done. So in theory, the condenser brackets should be simple. Maybe that's famous last words, but yeah, looks like that's going to be pretty good. So anyway, we'll tell you what, we got one more thing coming up before we knock off. We're going to install that brace we painted. So I'll get the car picked up and I'll show you guys that. Alright guys, we just got this brace bolted up and looks pretty good. Got it torqued to about 60 foot-pounds, and now this looks good. We just need to remove and paint every other black part on the car so they match. Alright guys, well, if you made it this far, you've made it to the end of the video. I know it kind of turned into a long one. We kind of had a 10-minute monologue going over heat exchangers there towards the end. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. Do y'all prefer the shorter videos or the longer ones? Let me know what y'all like. And if you did like the video, go ahead and click like, and feel free to share this with anybody that you think might be interested. I'm gonna try to grow this channel, see what happens. I've had like 50 people tell me I should try to do YouTube one day, so this has been my effort. And let me know what y'all think. Alright guys, take it easy.